people outside. Next presenting on stage, The Future of Nebraskans with Mary Chase, Josie Gatti Schafer, Karina Perez, and Jeff Yost. Moderated by Natalia Alamdari.
Well, hello everyone. I hope everyone can hear me. Sorry, 1 second. Let me get you all your microphones. So we will jump into things because we've got a tight 40 minutes. So a little bit of a primer heading into this panel. Last year we reported, sorry. Did you turn it off? Yeah, turn it on as you talk. We'll figure it out. We reported a series of stories on Nebraska's demographic changes. Specifically in 93 counties, all 93 counties saw an increase in the number of people of color living there. In 24 counties, 100% of their population growth was because of people of color living in Nebraska and choosing to live and stay there. And we did a deep dive into, what do those dynamics mean for the state, especially at a time when we're seeing so much political strife tied to immigration. So to start things off, Josie, I wonder if you could talk us through some of the factors driving population growth in Nebraska, and where is it more pronounced than other places?
I don't like to be in the same sentence as political strife. No, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for the reporting you all do. I'm so honored to work with you all. The caliber is noticeable and needed. I'm Josie Gatti Schafer. I'm the director of the Center for Public Affairs Research at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. We do a whole wide range of community engaged research, and a lot of that is based around census data and disseminating census data. We're the state data center for Nebraska. That does not make us the state demographers. We don't have a state demographer. We should. But it does make us a resource on population and population growth and change. So Nebraska is interesting in that I think we say we're not growing a lot, but we are growing. We are just not growing evenly across the state, and we're not always growing in the ways we think we are or maybe we want to. So there's only 3 ways to grow: natural change, births minus deaths, domestic in-migration, or international migration. We are positive for that natural change. We are growing the number of Nebraskans that are born here in Nebraska. We rank high compared to other states on that metric, but we are not a large population, and you need population density for that natural change. The real source of growth for Nebraska, and referencing that article, really is the foreign-born population. And actually in the last decade, 7.4% growth, 69 counties lost population. In this newest decade, we are actually counting that foreign-born population a bit better, and we are seeing more growth in those rural counties, but it is all attributed to that international migration. So important to if growth is a goal, that's a group of people that want to come here, and we'll probably talk about why they want to come here. And then we've been net negative on domestic migration. People move here every year from other states. Anybody move here from another state? There you go, right? Like, it's not that we don't do it, I did too. We just have more people that leave every year than come in. And so I think those 3 sources of growth, we can learn a lot about how to grow, how to change. Mayor Ewing says he wants to grow, so we can learn from the people that come. We can also learn from the people that leave, and that's research I'm actively doing and hope to talk about.
And you kind of touched on my next question. Why do people move here?
Do you want me to keep talking?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I truly believe and have researched from a couple different lenses in a couple different ways this question of why do people leave. And I want to say really clearly, it is not an easy choice to pick up and move, especially if you have a family and a job. Your social and economic networks, your community networks are so important to your way of life that you are not going to break that easily. So it is never really just like one clear thing. It is a complex calculus. But we know Nebraskans work really hard, and we know we have high labor force participation rate and low unemployment and highest rates in the country for those with a bachelor's degrees working, highest rates in the country for those 16 to 18 working, right? So across all those workforce metrics, if you're here in Nebraska working, when you show up in another state, you're probably going to work too. And so while I think there's a lot that goes into the decision, and there's a lot that goes into the decision to boomerang back as well, job opportunities, just what Mayor Ewing was saying, is the leading factor. And I am just really clear on that in so many ways. We can look at the demographics of those who move, the occupations of those who move. If you've talked about brain drain, you've probably cited us on brain drain. It has to do with economic opportunity. It's also why people move in the state. Why do people leave rural Nebraska and come to Omaha? Economic opportunity. Why does someone leave another country and come to Nebraska? Economic opportunity, right? If we are, nobody's moving to make less money, right? So it's just such an important part of how we grow, and people are economics, right? That is our growth. And so when we think about moving people, when we think about moving companies, we really have to think about what opportunities we're creating for them, both economically, and then I think we'll get into the social network and community development part of that as well.
Jeff, question for you going off of that. We've talked a lot about, communities that are growing, their population base growing economic development-wise. I wonder if you could describe to us specifically in rural Nebraska what your population base means for your local resources and what life amenities you might have access to.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Yost. I'm the president and CEO of the Nebraska Community Foundation. Such a pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you. And thanks to Flatwater and the Nebraska Journalism Trust for the terrific work. It really is needed and appreciated. If I may, a couple pieces on the prior subject to move into the next one. I think the other thing that's really unappreciated within sort of the job piece of this is Nebraskans have more jobs than we have people. So we actually don't have a jobs crisis. We have more of a people crisis. And a huge piece of the people crisis is about narrative, self-fulfilling prophecy, self-concept. And that's a huge piece of the community building part of this. For most of my life, the self-fulfilling prophecy and self-concept in almost all communities in Nebraska has not been good, right? We've encouraged lots and lots of young people, especially young people with options, that they're going to have a better future someplace else. And there's, again, to Josie's point, there's lots and lots and lots of variables here. I can't think of anything that has more variables than the choice to move and migration patterns. So there are no simple solutions here. There are no silver bullets. But within that context, COVID really had an extraordinarily important learning for us. COVID was awful. COVID was devastating. But the tiny little silver lining of COVID is it actually created proof of concept for what I'd been trying to work on the 20 years prior, which is the community economic development question of the 21st century is not really one of jobs, it's one of place. Why do I want to live and work and raise my family here? And COVID gave us proof of concept that you can live and work and raise your family anywhere you want to be. So the community economic development question today is now one of place. And our work at the Nebraska Community Foundation is all about place making and community making and helping people feel welcome and a sense of belonging. Because we have more choices and we continue to ask, in my opinion, lots of 20th century questions, but we need to update some of our questions to sort of 21st century realities. So within your point about communities, our community building work is to help communities be super, super proud of themselves and then manifest the abundance that exists in those places to have terrific community services and a terrific quality of life. And again, lots and lots of these people have brought their jobs with them or are doing remote work in addition to a spouse having a local job. So there's lots of hybrid stuff going on within this context. One of the things that I found, and I'm trained as an economist, and one of the things that the orthodoxy that I was brought up with was you had to have a certain economy of scale for things to work. And in our work at the Nebraska Community Foundation over the years, we work with a huge number of places, less than 1,000 people. These are amazing communities. These communities have an incredible sense of belonging, sense of welcoming, remarkably good school systems, good health care access. I mean, lots and lots and lots of different pieces. So again, some of our 20th century questions around economy of scale, technology has changed, again, lots of these things in terms of how do you build out an economy of scale? And you can do it in lots of different ways today than what we used to be able to do. The piece that I'll finish up with here is that our goal is to help communities feel powerful in their own right. Because when a community feels powerful in its own right, its willingness and opportunity to collaborate with a neighboring community is completely different than if they're forced into it. You know, I've studied school consolidation, again, sort of all of my professional life. Very, very few of these are school mergers. They're almost always school acquisitions. People hate being acquired. And they don't forgive, right? So our work is to help communities build community power so they can show up as a powerful partner to collaborate with their neighbors to figure out how do we take what we have to make what we need. And that's how we're going to figure out lots and lots of these community services questions in the 21st century.
I do have a follow-up question tied to how you were describing this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that rural Nebraska has had, and you kind of see the tide turning on that with people being more willing to move home. But I guess to me the counterpart.
Very much so.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and Josie and I have done lots of this work over the years, and this is, I think, a key piece of this whole question around demographics and the future of Nebraska is this generation of young people is absolutely amazing. If you're not in deep relationship with an 18 to 25-year-old, find one. They're incredible. They're absolutely incredible, and anybody that's bitching about these kids doesn't know these kids. We have, thank you. So with Josie's help and through lots and lots of our affiliated funds around the state, we've surveyed about 4,000 high school age students in 53 different greater Nebraska school districts in the past 4 years. What they're telling us is completely different than my conventional wisdom growing up in Red Cloud in the 1980s. The top three things for these young people, these high school age students, are safety, proximity to family, and good schools. I don't know that any of those were in my top 10 when I was 18 years old, right? I mean, the world has changed. These kids are all connected. Their technological skills are extraordinary, and they love their hometowns. So if we ask them if there would be a stigma staying or returning to their hometown, very, very few of them say yes to that question. And again, a generation ago, almost all young people would have said there was a significant stigma, you know, not only sort of throughout Nebraska, right? This is a whole Nebraska question. This is a rural and urban question. So as we think about these demographic pieces, we also really need to think about how can we be the communities that these young people are doing actually lifestyle design work to work their ways back to these places. And we're doing lots of different efforts, in essence, helping young people to take a sojourn away from their home and even back into their home, but helping them sort of realize what they want out of life, as opposed to being 35 and saying, I wish I would have.
I think you kind of read my mind because I was going to bring up the rural poll, but the piece of it that strikes me too still, though, is that, yes, so many kids are saying, oh, I would love to live somewhere like my hometown, but I think it was over 50% of them say, oh, job opportunity is probably the reason why I wouldn't. Do you feel like there's still a perception gap there?
And I think there is a perception that we're actually successfully helping them with, because many of them say, I'm very interested in being in the healthcare field. When they begin to learn about the healthcare infrastructure in their community and their region, they begin to find, oh, there's a whole lot more opportunities here than I knew. So part of it is the survey is actually the first step in beginning these conversations with these young people. I mean, we're in Nebraska, right? Nebraska's always struggled with this stuff. We need to be really intentional about curating these young people to be in community with us. It's not just going to happen, sort of. It's going to happen because we're super intentional and we're being really good about providing invitations, providing them opportunities, trying new ways of doing things. So yeah, I mean, if you want to be an aerospace engineer, you're not going to do it in Shickley. Although you might be able to do it online. I don't know. But so there, you know, not every job opportunity is going to exist in rural places, but there are a huge number of job opportunities that exist in rural places in the 21st century.
Karina, I wanted to ask you a bit about living in Columbus and working in Columbus. It's one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing communities in Nebraska. I can't remember the exact statistic on that, an incredibly diverse city. I guess for you, how have you seen the community grow and change, and how has your work at Centro Hispano adjusted with that?
Thank you for the question, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karina Perez, and I'm the executive director at Centro Hispano in Columbus. And honestly, when my family arrived in the late 90s to Columbus, I remember being one of the only students that identify as Hispanic or Latina in my classroom. And to the last year that my baby sister graduated, and more than 50% of her class identify as Hispanic or Latino. And the trajectory of that within the last couple years has really, I think, changed our community and the work that we've been doing towards retaining individuals in our community and really working to not create places where they're adapting, but really allow them to celebrate their culture, their history, and really bring it to our community to be able to celebrate and engage with them as well. And so I think part of our work at Centro Hispano has really been about creating, and I think Jeff touched on this, opportunities for belonging and welcoming. I think belonging has been a piece of our work that we've really shifted into in the last 2 to 3 years, and really being able to evoke that feeling of belonging is really hard because we can't control people's feelings, and we can only do certain things to really create places where they can start to feel that sensation of belonging in their communities. And a lot of that really was from being able to understand some of the needs that members were coming with, that were coming into our community. And so our organization really just started out of that, seeing that there was high needs for immigration services, education, and business entrepreneurship. One piece that Jeff touched was people really want their talents to also be embraced and their gifts to be acknowledged. And a lot of these people come with big aspirations for why they migrate into our communities, and being able to find opportunities that allow them to explore that has really been key in keeping and retaining these. I think in the last couple of years, we've welcomed over 36 new businesses that are Latino or Hispanic owned through our entrepreneurship program. And a lot of that has been things and services that they've done back in their home country, and they just haven't been able to connect here in our community. So being able to provide them the skills and the resources to grow and start their businesses has been key, and really being able to help family members find their place in their community. And I think that's part of it all. I think for us is really finding, specifically in a time that we're in right now, finding this narrative that frames immigrants in this negative light, and really uplifting the stories that have really helped increase and empower our economic power in our community, as well as other pieces that are really important.
And part of something that was really interesting to me in my reporting over the past year, partially because I too am a second generation from an immigrant family, was this idea of, you have your population base of people who come from another country, but then you have their kids and their kids who decide to stay in a place. I wonder, how have you seen that kind of generational change happen in Columbus? And do you see a difference with each generation, people getting more ingrained and involved in the community?
Yes, and actually we just had written this new article that came out the last couple of days, if you guys have a chance, but that really kind of puts an emphasis to that piece. I think a lot of immigrants carry this saying that we say in Spanish, ni de aquí ni de allá, and it's this feeling of neither belonging here nor there, because we are split between these identities of where we feel this love for. And as we've been doing some work with our community and our city administration on a quick story. We've had a local firefighter who was from his hometown in Zacapo, Michoacan, who is currently doing firefighting work in Columbus, and he had seen this need in his community in Zacapo, where they only have volunteer fire departments and no city-funded dollars to give to them. On a ongoing basis, per law, equipment is no longer allowed to be used in the U.S., and so they ended up having this large amount of equipment that was no longer able to be used here, but was still in very pristine condition. And so began this conversation of how can we get these resources to this community that really needed it. Fast forward 2 years later, and a lot of legalities behind it, but we recently came back from this trip from Mexico where we were able to turn over this gear to this community that is 75,000, I think, per the 2020 census, but currently about close to 100,000 in individuals that's only serviced by 30 volunteer firefighters. So that is insane to think about, and they were using normal construction helmets to go into these fires with no fire-approved gear, and seeing the transformative nature of like what this equipment would do for their fire rescue, I think spoke to what we can do when we eliminate some of those rhetorics around immigrants, but the feeling that this individual had about not being able to identify neither here, like being from both places and having to feel this need to choose of where they had to represent, but realizing at the end of his story and his journey that he could love both places equally and still give back to his local community and his hometown and his home country. And so I think that's part of the piece that we're working to, that we don't have to continuously feel like we have to choose what we love and how we express that too. And so I feel like I wasn't really fully answering your question, but it really brought me back to that feeling.
Yeah, no, this idea of because you have a foot in both worlds, you can have that impact in both places. Mary, I wonder if we could talk a bit about more of the Omaha perspective. We talked a little bit about this before the panel, but talk us through, you work here at Creighton, tell us about your student base, where they come from, and what they end up doing after graduation.
So my name is Mary Chase. I'm the Vice Provost for Enrollment here at Creighton University. So on behalf of the university leadership, welcome to our university and welcome to the Harper Center. We're happy to host you, and thank you for allowing me to share a little bit about our student population in these demographic declines that we're experiencing. At Creighton University, I oversee the admissions and recruitment. And one of the things that's really been important to me, I'm in my 23rd year here. I started when I was 12. What are you guys laughing about? Anyway, I've been here for 23 years, and when I came here, we had just enrolled a class of 800 freshmen. And when you think about this year, we enrolled just shy of 1,250 students. It's been a gradual increase. We've not tried to enroll droves of students and create this infusion of students to a university that wasn't able or ready to handle them. And I think that's what Omaha has done very strategically in its growth. We've not been growing at a rate where we haven't been able to put the infrastructure in place to manage the growth. And at Creighton University, with 1,250 students in our freshman class and roughly 9,000 students overall, I think what we're trying to do is bring students to Omaha, help them appreciate Omaha and Nebraska in general in the Midwest, and about 50% of our students stay. So when you think about our students in the freshman class, about 80% of them come from outside of the Omaha Council Bluffs area. And more than 50% of them are staying in our state. What that says is exactly what all three of the panelists have talked about so far, and that is the belonging, the sense of belonging, the sense of community. When I moved here 23 years ago, I was sitting in the admissions office, and I was trying to learn a little bit about Creighton and a little bit about Omaha because I was new to both. And I said, what do you love about Creighton? And the current student said to me, I love that I can walk down the center of campus, which we call the mall, and I won't know everyone, but I'll always see a familiar face. And then I said, okay, I'm also new to Omaha. What do you love about Omaha? And she's from Chicago. And she said, oh, I love Omaha. It has one of everything and no traffic. She clearly wasn't on I-80 this morning, right? Again, I think that what we have to come to appreciate is that we do have one of everything here. We have a sense of community and a sense of belonging. And it's true to the Creighton mission, academic excellence. We bring great students here who want to stay. And our Jesuit mission leads us to serve others. And we have, our community matches what Omaha and our community in Omaha does. We love philanthropy. We'll hear from another panel later today. We love giving back to our community, and those are the students we're trying to attract. That's why they stay, because all of you welcome our students into your community, our community of Omaha. And what Mayor Ewing was talking about is we need to create jobs for these students so that they can continue to stay here and continue to grow in their careers and advance their educational attainment in healthcare or in business or in law or whatever it might be. And so although the demographics are declining, Creighton University is doing, and I believe, a phenomenal job of bringing 80% of our students from outside of the Omaha Council Bluffs area and keeping 50% of them here. So I think that's something that we love to do to contribute back, but it's because of the Omaha community that people stay. It's the business, it's the healthcare, it's the community service opportunities that you all are creating for us.
Right, and kind of going off of that, especially when we're talking about brain drain and ideas of how a community might be growing or not growing, could you tell us a bit about how that student recruitment and academic offerings tie in with meeting the workforce needs both of Omaha but the state as a whole?
Yeah, what's pretty cool is, there's a lot of disciplines to choose from, whether you're looking at the University of Nebraska in Omaha, or you're looking at Creighton University or Bellevue or any of the great institutions of higher education that are here in our city. But I think what we are trying to do specifically at Creighton is the liberal arts or the foundation or the core courses teach critical things like critical thinking. They teach leadership. They teach things that what people, I'm going to admit, I don't like the word soft skills. I like to call them durable skills because for a lifetime they stick with you. If you have critical thinking and communication and those types of skills, you're going to be able to progress and meet the job force needs, whether it's in a discipline of serving in your church and your community, or whether you're working in a law firm, or whether you're working in healthcare, or whether you're working in business or industry. And so I think what higher education can continue to do is not worry about what AI is going to do to remove jobs, but think about teaching the skills to utilize the tools and the opportunities and the mindsets that exist to prepare our students for the future. And whatever the job creation is in our community, if we prepare our students with the durable skills, they'll be able to adapt and live with 1 foot raised, ready to pivot and serve the needs of the community in which they live.
Josie, I want to jump back to something that you said at the very beginning that I was just like, I want to know more about this. You talked about this idea of, Nebraska might be growing and we might have a different idea of how the communities are growing and shrinking that's wrong. Like, what are some of those misconceptions that you have picked up on?
Oh, goodness. Right, population really does just grow in those 3 ways. And I don't know, I think we sometimes think like, they're just going to fall from the sky, or we could just go grab them or something. Yeah, right. Just go grab them. You can go grab them, right? You can offer a scholarship and really get somebody here, but economic development, population attraction, and retention doesn't really work that simply. Like, those dynamics are a little bit more complicated. We don't have a silver bullet to just grab people. And I think that's one thing. So there's just been a lot of like, we need to grow. That is not the end of a sentence. That is the beginning of a sentence. We have to have a big conversation about how to do that. We can't just say we want to do that. It is something that has to be worked on across multiple levers. So I think that's one of the perception issues. And then there are also places that might not want to grow. And there's a tension between those two groups, and it's not always clear. I don't know that everyone's always being clear about if they want to grow or not, or they're being specific about what they want to grow, but they're not always saying that. I've seen that out there as well. So I think that's some challenges. That, so the growth in the foreign-born population, we saw a real jump in numbers, right? We just surpassed the 2 million mark in Nebraska, and everyone was like, oh, this is a big deal. I was wholly unimpressed because it could be that we passed that mark a really long time ago. The data in between the official counts is not an official count, it's an estimate. It's our best guess based on available data, and like I said, we don't have a state demographer feeding back all the local data, so we might have passed that mark a couple years ago. We could have passed it in 2021. What really happened was we are now better at counting the foreign-born population at the United States Census Bureau and feeding that data back. And so that was really the big growth metric. So I think that's a wonderful thing. But when we say we grew past 2 million, we should really talk about how we grew and understand that. Again, so that we can support further growth or have a conversation about why or how we grow. So those are some of the misperceptions. With brain drain, oh, it's retirees. It is not retirees. We break it down by age group as well. It actually was very consistently that 20 to 25-year-old group, and now it's moved up to the 34 to 40-year-old group, which is really concerning for me, right? So it's not retirees. It's not people who just move for weather. Anybody have a guess where most Nebraskans move to? Natalia knows. Colorado. Scream if you want to be heard. Texas, Missouri, Arizona. It's Iowa. We have the same weather, we can recreate that weather here. So, I think people have this idea that people jump ship for all of these reasons that are, there's nothing we can do about it. It's actually a lot of things we can do something about. And so I think that's another one of the big misperceptions. That people don't like rural Nebraska. And honestly, when the Nebraska Community Foundation asked me to do a rural youth survey, I said, you're not gonna like it. And I was wrong. I was so wrong. Students love those communities. And I would even challenge that the perception long ago was that there was a stigma. I just think we've created a stigma that people are leaving rural areas for some reason that has to do with the place. I don't think it is place. I think it has to do with other factors. And so I think there's a lot of misperceptions about why people do what we do. And we hear an anecdote or we have our own feeling, but I don't know that we always explore that very completely.
Let's see. Karina, I wonder if we could talk a bit, we touched on this before the panel, like talking through what we should cover today. And we talked a bit about the current political climate. We've seen increased immigration enforcement. We had the raid at Glen Valley here in Omaha earlier this year, and just all these different pieces of immigration enforcement that have really started to hit Nebraska. How are you seeing the repercussions of that play out in Columbus?
I'll talk in particular about Columbus and then kind of just even the trends that we've been seeing across the state. And I think as even the CHNV parolee program came to a termination earlier this year, a lot of the individuals or even our local corporations and businesses were like, will we have an impact? Will we start to feel some of this? And as the days went on by and then E-Verify began to kind of kick in for some of these employers, At one point we saw an employer lose over 56 individuals at once. And right now, like in that moment, people don't think that's much, but in a community or even an employer, um, when you think of a community like Columbus, and for perspective, for some of you who aren't familiar with Columbus, it's a population of about 26,000. Um, it's a significant number of families that are going to be impacted because it's not just one individual, it's usually a spouse that then also had status with that individual. It usually involves children who also are going to be impacted, and are either going to be enrolled in our school system and then taken out of our school system. It happened at a really interesting time because we were in the middle of going into a new school year. So in the meantime, we have families who were already gone through enrollment, are in our school system, and now we're in this find out period of what will be happening to individuals who no longer hold status, who then no longer also have the ability to work and or provide for their family, but they still reside in our community. And I think the reality hits for nonprofit agencies and communities in general of how much can we really provide for these families. It's all short term, right? And so we will begin to lose these families because they don't have readily available pathways. So even if they're going through a process, I think one piece that individuals forget when we talk about our immigration system, it's not an immediate resolution. We're looking at months to years ahead. We just finished this last year, one of our longest cases, 24 years of wait period for an individual to become a legal permanent residence. So it's like we think about these numbers, and I think individuals and our community isn't very well informed to know how long and how broken our immigration legal system is, that we just think, let's give individuals these pathways, or let's increase our work visas. And it's that those are not long-term solutions when we have individuals in our communities who have been residing in our communities for many years, who are long-term Nebraskans, and they have yet to get an opportunity to feel this sense of permanency in their community. And so I think as time goes on, we're going to start seeing some of the repercussions. And I think individuals say, like, well, there will be an adjustment period and we will need them back again. I think the reality of hitting people and be like, hey, you can come back now, that's not a thing that just happens overnight. And I think it's the reality of, like, migrating to the U.S. is a challenging thing in general, a costly thing in general, and for us to feel like when this system adjusts and when we really need people again, everyone will just come back. That's not going to happen. And reality is our communities won't be prepared for that to happen. And I think that is part of we have more jobs than people. We have people here that could be working, and we aren't giving them the access to work.
And especially in Columbus, which is so like factory, meat packing driven, like those jobs, like the function of those places will go down as you lose employees too, like the long-term sustainability.
It is, and the businesses will feel the impact, our economic impact, well, I think, is what will probably start to move the resolution, because what moves most states is money. Once the economic impact is felt is when decision-making will start to happen.
Josie, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just a quick comment. You've probably heard this demographic cliff term, right? Which is the idea that we have more aging adults than young folks. And that has happened already in some states. They have hit their demographic cliff. We have not. So our ratios are declining. So in 1980, it was about 5-to-1 aging adults to young adults. Now it's like 3-to-1, but we're in our best couple years for that portion of our population being in the prime age workforce. We're like in the good times. We haven't hit the demographic cliff yet in Nebraska. And so when we're talking about folks leaving and not coming back, it's only going to make that demographic cliff hurt pretty bad. And we're already saying we need more people, and it's actually, these are the good years. We're in it right now. It's coming soon, but it's not yet.
We are almost coming up on time. Jeff, go ahead.
I was just going to add one piece, which is we can talk about trying to get people to come to Nebraska, but, the weather's not perfect, right? I mean, we don't have mountains and beaches, so it is a little harder to recruit people to Nebraska. My opinion is the people that we want to work the hardest on are the people that are already here. How do we be having these conversations with young people about this is a place where you can have a really honorable, meaningful future in lots and lots of different ways? And again, it's part of what's so amazing about this generation that's coming of age is their holistic outlook on life is so much more mature than mine was at that age. Let's have these conversations with them about what is meaningful, what is happiness, what is fulfillment, and I think lots of them will respond to that very positively.
Great, with that, we are at time. Karina, did you have?
Can I ask a question? Nobody said anything about the Native American population and the Native American community. You were staying here for family contact and such. Is there something that we should hear from you?
They are a part of our population. No, absolutely. Actually, a declining part of our population. We're going to be looking at some data on Tuesday. And yeah, so have a Native population. There has been outreach to the Native population, but it is one of the demographic groups that are actually leaving the state more than coming into the state. So that is another interesting question about why.
And with that, we have to wrap up for our next panel, but Flatwater has done reporting on the Native communities here. Thank you, everyone.